Show you how like thoroughly clean a computer today. That's what we're gonna do. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We are going to be doing. So this is the computer that came in. This port right there was completely damaged by the cable melting. There you go. Now you guys should be able to see it. If it'll focus, it's not going to focus. Come on, focus on this, you stupid thing. There you go. So it's that one. This power supply kind of fried because of this cable, which this cable is, as you can see, dead. So we ordered a new power supply. We're going to get that installed, and we have to rebuild this computer entirely because there's just a bunch of stuff that are incorrectly set up. So we need to start pulling out all of the cables related to the CPU, or the old power supply, and we'll get everything moved over to the new one. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. If you like these videos, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. It really, really helps the channel. So I'm going to just do a quick glance through here. There's just stuff like floating around in here. See if I can find the release for this. Oh, that's right. The release for this is this button. So we're good there. What we're going to do is we are going to put this back in here. This is a 3090 Ti. I'm going to need to remove that first. Get this put back in here, and then we're going to check to make sure it's working, and this guy doesn't also need a new GPU. And then after we do that, we will undo, we're going to take this thing all the way apart, and then we're going to cable manage. So that's what the plan is. So let's pull this out. We're replacing a 1300 watt power supply with a 1300 watt power, or excuse me, a 1200 watt with a 1200 watt. We went from an ASRock. Why do I keep saying ASRock? This is an Asus ROG Thor 1200 to a Seasonic Vertex 1200. We're going from mid-brand to relatively high-end brand. I really like the Seasonic stuff. It's pretty decent quality. See, that's what I thought. But there would have been no way for him to get liquid on that connector. Because where the power supply sits, which is right here, there's a shield that goes over it. And nothing else was wet. Yeah, and if you like, you can actually get a pretty good look at it if you go look at that short that I did. Yeah, I know. So, remembering things. So this attaches to a bracket, which is on here. Where's that bracket? Is it still on the power supply? It is still on the power supply. So my main concern is that it actually did damage to the GPU. So that's first. Secondary, if this video card, when I plug it back in, does the same thing to this Seasonic, it's gonna have questions. Because he said, and I quote, I did an update and then my computer no longer would start. And I went and I checked it. It all, like everything was fine as soon as I unplugged the GPU. But then when I started taking it apart to do a little bit deeper of a diagnosis, I discovered that the damaged cable, and I was like, that looks like liquid damage. And then started really, really looking at it, and it would have been super hard for him to do it. Again, not saying that that is not exactly what happened, but it would have been exceptionally difficult for him to do it without damaging literally anything else in the computer. So, unless someone did it, like, intentionally. He's got that new electronic smell. All right, so we got our back bracket on there. We're gonna take the CPU cooler out as well and redo that, because these fans are pulling air in, and they're 2 different speed fans. So if you have anything, you should have all matched fans on this cooler. So I kind of talked about a little bit before. We have our jumper. And then we'll see if this power supply came with. Sometimes they do. Came with the 12-volt high power, which it did. So we can dump this adapter. It'd be nice if they, like, one thing that I found was interesting about this, and I know it's not needed here, is this 12-volt high power doesn't have the additional pins that run along the top. So if you're to look at it, it's only got those 12 pins. That's it, and it doesn't so these 12. It doesn't actually have the connector that's sitting on the top. So just thought it was interesting when I looked at it. And that's the adapter that came with the video card, so it's one of the ones it can use. All right, so that's plugged in. We're good on that side. We're good on this side. Let's get our main power plugged in, 24. And then we need, I think it's only one CPU. But to get to the CPU power, I have to remove this cooler gently. There we go. Because we need access back over there. And with this, we're going to be using both of these so this thing can power share a little bit easier. Spread that load out a little bit. CPU. Come on, get in there. All right, let's see what it do. It's either going to work or fail spectacularly immediately. Hopefully we don't have any grinding. When I turn these fans on, power button's over there. Okay. In a weird spot. At least a weird spot for me. Maybe it's a normal spot for this case. Alright, 3, 2, 1. There's a fan up front hitting a cable I can't access. Let's check this. Looking back there, we don't have... So this is the actual cable right here. We have no heat coming off of this thing. So that's pretty good. Yeah, so you can see the entire screen is gray. All right, so we should be solid now. Let's tear this whole thing apart and rebuild it. No, it's not this one. It's coming from over here. I know it's hard to tell without like a stereo microphone in this situation, but it's actually coming. It's coming from on the inside here, or behind this front glass, which sure that comes off somehow. I've never actually worked on one of these cases before. I'm genuinely interested how to get some of this stuff apart. See a screw here. Wonder if there's 2 of these. That is a long screw, sir. That's what she said. Well, there's like, so here, I'll show you the, with this glass front on this case. Man, this camera being low is being a problem. So this is the glass front. You can see I can fit my whole hand comfortably in there. There's plenty of room for airflow in this one this time. So I'm not going to rail against that too hard. All right, let's get all these cables out of here. We're going to take this thing down to basically bare metal. We're going to clean it. And then after we clean it, we'll get it put back together, cable managed, all hopefully within maybe about an hour and a half. Mainly because I don't have to build too much stuff. There are some cables that I got to redo the cooler entirely. Just because it was not put together correctly. We'll see how this goes. All right, let's get GPU out of there. I'm just going to start removing stuff at this point. And again, just as a reminder, the release for this is right there. Press down, up and out. Out. See Sonic power supply, get that removed. Okay, this guy clearly is not using this, so we'll probably get this out of here just for better airflow and whatnot. I'm curious. So yeah, that's the only thing holding that in. One, and it'll make it easier to clean. Two, up and out. It's not that you can see this. There's a cover that sits over this. Let's get all of these cables unplugged. Let me get this rear fan out. The only thing, this is going to a controller, just going to a fan header. All right, so that's good. All right, let's get this out of here. Like this is just a couple of screws. Up. Again. So, what do you see immediately here? Not sure what the intent was here. So that filter comes out of the top. So we will take that out the top. And my tips for cleaning, take your time. As you're doing this, you got to remember, like depending on how old it is, who knows how long it's been since some of these components have been cleaned or touched. I mean, you can see that's like, it's pretty bad. So we'll get that one done. And if you're dealing with like older hardware, some of that stuff might actually be like fragile, which isn't something you would normally think about when, you know, discussing a computer. All right, let's get this rotated forward. And that stuff being, you know, somewhat fragile can have consequences when it comes. I'm sorry, you guys aren't gonna be able to see this for a second because that radiator isn't attached. Has consequences. Plastic gets brittle. I just want to get these cables disconnected. We'll do our own zip ties. We'll route them together, not the correct way per se, but we'll route them some type of way. So many different zip ties. What is going on here? Is that all unhooked? Here's these. Those are not connected to anything anymore, are they? At this point, we're undoing zip ties. We got a lot of stuff zip tied together that shouldn't necessarily be zip tied together the way it is. More off of the front, that off of here. I will say this, at least there was an attempt to do cable management. It's always positive. That means the person at least thought about it and it wasn't like, oh, I just, you know, I have all of these cables. Let me just push. That's all the way out. What are we hooked up on over here? All right, let's get this out of here. So that's one more. I don't know, Emily. Every computer's a little bit different. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 200. All right, well, we're going to get this CPU cooler off of here. Where does this even go? So again, like if you're not familiar with this, this is a magnetic screen. So you can put it on there and you can make adjustments. And then on the bottom underneath the pump, I'll show you, there's actually a fan underneath that screen, not only to help with cooling of the screen, but to help with cooling the VRMs that are underneath there as well. Guess non-magnetic? Oh, they're magnetic. Just my screwdriver's not holding on to them for some reason. This cluster. And we're about to start dealing with thermal paste, which means start putting on gloves. All right, so we have this guy. You can see it's a little bit dusty. We're gonna turn my compressor on, we're gonna blow it out. And then we will also grab the vacuum, we'll dust it out. And start putting it back together. We have all of this, which is really not removable. Let's get this out of here. Like, I hear things moving that I shouldn't hear. Like, what is going on here? It's another filter. We gotta blow out and clean. Oh, look at that. We're finding screws. Who knows what those screws are for? All right, that looks like it. All right, compressor's going on. We'll take a look here. Everything has now been dusted. All right, and as promised, this is the CPU block. You can see this is where the screen magnetically attaches into here. And then once it magnetically attaches in there, this sits below it, moves air not only across the back of the LCD component, but across the VRM as well. All right. Well, this is one half of what we're gonna do. Let's do the other half. We're gonna clean this thing up now. All right, so let's start getting this back together. We already have, we're gonna pretend like we're coming into this halfway through a build. So we already have the motherboard installed, we have our CPU installed, we have our memory installed. That for now, a little bit of extra dust there that I missed. All right, so that's everything we're gonna install in this for now. So let's set this off to the side. And let's get this apart and reassembled. Let me see how much of a charge I have left in my electric here. Apparently not too much. Yeah, like I said, I don't think that electric battery is holding much of a charge anymore. I have to look at actually taking that apart and replacing it in that screwdriver. 3, 4. And we're gonna undo all of this zip tie nonsense. We're still gonna use zip ties, we're just gonna do it a lot differently. Just put it like that. So that we have like cables with like cables. We have a single size of zip tie throughout the whole project. Now we're going to continue to mount these at the top of the case, which is fine. With that being said, we are going to make sure that they are pointed the right way. How in the world, like how in the world did this person do this? Hey, I'm not gonna knock this. This guy got this together, had it running for an extended period of time. it wasn't as efficient as it could be, but all that matters is that now it's going to be put together as efficiently as possible. It's actually important when you're dealing with higher end components, mainly because you don't want to deal with situations where you have one component that's being heated or that is retaining heat at a significantly higher rate than everything else, because then it becomes the weak point. And I'm going to use an analogy here after I vacuum this, because as you can see, even after blowing this out, it's still completely and utterly caked with dust, which is why, like, I highly recommend every 6 months taking apart your all-in-one coolers and cleaning them out thoroughly. Okay. Now we got to do some reconfiguring. So the analogy that I want to give is, it's a car analogy, and some of you will get this, some of you won't. When you're building a car, like, not just going and buying something, if you're taking a car and you're actively, like, upgrading it, you're putting like a bigger turbo on it, you're putting like a bigger supercharger, intake, heavier wheels, like stickier tires. What you have to start doing after you do that is you have to start looking at what your highest point of failure is going to be. It is a lug nut brush from Viking. So you have to do is you have to find the points of failure in your system before it fails while you're hurtling down the road at 60, 80, 100 miles an hour. So if you have a Honda Civic and you have your stock Honda Civic brakes and you have a 500 horsepower motor in the car, reining in that 500 horsepower is going to take more than 2 discs in one drum. Same thing applies to computers, though not quite as extreme. If you upgrade your CPU, you got to get yourself a better cooler. If you upgrade your video card, you need to get better fans to move air throughout the system to get it cooler air. You have to get it a bigger power supply if you were dealing with onboard graphics originally. So I mean, that's just one of those things. Okay. So, yeah, this is for cleaning lug nuts. I bought them in bulk because they are perfect inside of a computer because they're non-metallic. All right, so these fans were actually set up correctly, sort of. Just trying to figure out the best way for me to actually accomplish this, because you want to generally have matched fan speeds when we're talking about the CPU cooler. So you're not creating like a dead pressure zone inside of the vents of the radiator. But the reason this guy had this set up the way he did is because he wanted to see all these pretty RGB fans. Well, unfortunately, you're only going to see part of these. These are going up to the top. And if you want to get more fancy, you can order himself some fans and replace the ones that are on here. That I'm going to be moving on to this. Just the fans, Emily. The fans and some of the cable management wasn't wrong, it just wasn't right. It functioned, put it like that. If that's the standard you want to use to as a kind of a metric here, because it was more for visual appeal than actual performance. So I don't think we're going to do what he did. We're not going to double stack these fans. There's not really a point because we already have 3 140 millimeter fans that are 1400 RPM, and then we have these guys here which are Noctuas, which are NF12. I think we're just gonna put these Noctuas in here. Yeah, so we're gonna have these 3 Noctuas pulling air in because these are gonna be more efficient than those 100 and they're not bad. They are 140 millimeters. They could just be a lot more efficient. And I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else that we can sneak some of these in, maybe along the bottom where the power supply sits. Seeing as we don't have that rack there anymore, we might be able to squeeze them there. And then also, what if I just front mount the CPU cooler? So at least that way he'll be able to see. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. We'll front mount the CPU cooler. That way the CPU cooler is going to pull the best air. So we're going to completely change this dude's setup. And these Noctuas are going to be used everywhere else. So let's start setting this up. And give these a quick brush. So the way that these will need to be set up, these are all going to be intake. So this is the bottom, that's the top. Come this way. We're going to be sharing some holes here. You're just spinning the fan while manually brushing them. Okay, so what we're going to do next is this. Yeah, so we're going to be going. So I need to make sure that this is actually going to reach before I make this decision. Yeah, that'll reach. So that's on there. Oh yeah, that'll be nice. So what we need to do is there's a couple ways we can do this. We can either mount this with the radiators, with the radiator on the inside of this, or we can do this with the radiator on the bottom of this. So we're probably going to do it with the radiator on the bottom so that it's on the inside, so we still have plenty of clearance and airflow being pulled in from the front. So what we'll do is we're going to take these long screws and start feeding them in one at a time in each corner. And this way this guy will still be able to see his RGB. We need to make sure that this is down far enough that this hole is going to clearance that. So something we're going to have to do here, because this gentleman didn't use all of the correct screws, we're going to be only using half of the screws that we normally would in each fan. So there'll be a total of six screws on each side. We'll check for vibrations. Once we power it on, if I need to, I can pull this out, which is another nice thing about this. This will be a lot easier to pull out and do maintenance on. So we're gonna have the same speed fans on both sides now. So he'll have RGB on the front, he'll have RGB on the inside, which is good for him. So that way he's not in a situation where there's no RGB or you can't see it because it's sticking out the top of the case. Because everyone likes seeing their pretty little RGBs. And now we can tighten all of these down together. We'll know pretty quick once I get this all reinstalled whether or not we're going to have an issue with vibration, which we shouldn't. There's rubber on every single corner of one of these. And we're going to have a bunch of extra little screws that were used for something, which actually I know exactly what they're used for now that I look at them. I'm going to do something a little bit important to me, which is going to straighten cables. There are kinks in these cables that we don't necessarily want. We're never going to see this, but just doing these simple things, getting these kinks out of these cables so they don't look like this. Put a little pressure on it, pull, help straighten it out. It'll help making bends and getting around corners a lot easier. So I did that one, I did that one. And you can see how bad this is. Like, just takes a couple seconds. Oh, no, you're right. I wasn't paying attention as I was talking. Which is why it didn't fit on there when I tried to put it on there. It's like, that should just fit. That's why you got to pay attention. Thanks for calling that out. All right, and just verify the other side. Yeah, other side is fine. All right, so again, just going to go back, straighten these cables a little bit, get all the kinks out, make the cable management a little bit easier. All right, same thing on these guys. Get them all entangled. Straighten. So these ones weren't that bad. Yeah, this one is pretty bad. Undo that. This is the boring part of this. Get that undone. All right. Move all of those out of the way. We'll get back to those in a second. Let's look at getting this mounted inside the PC. So like I said, we're not going to be doing front of the case this time. Or top of the case, we're going to be doing front of the case, which is actually kind of what it's designed for. So the big thing we need to worry about is where these cables are going to go. All these cables are going to fit through one hole. And we'll reroute things as we need. We have to remember we can't pull on these things too hard. They are just wires. So if things aren't lining up, take your time and gently pull them through. That is in there now. To make sure that that back corner is in there, but at least for now we can semi-secure this in place while I finish doing a little bit of cable management. Figure out which way we want to put this on here. That seems okay. That way. That way it'll hide the cables a little bit better too. Just getting to make sure that this isn't like a one-way specific screen. So, which it is. So we have to pick a way. It's going to have to be like that. Or it's going to have to be the bottom. I think we can do it either way. Let's see here. Let's see which way is actually going to be better. I don't like the idea of doing it this way. So we're going to have to actually have a good look at this here. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. That is... So that's straight. So it would be... Like I said, not a fan of this because then that puts the possibility of this thing having air in it. Then that would go like that. Figure out which way we're going to do this. I think you're going to have to make a little bit of a sacrifice here. I'm going to, for performance, I'm going to do this. That feels right. So one thing I'm noticing here that I need to address before we start putting stuff on here, besides these things being anti-magnetic, is these standoffs are real loose. Get these tightened down all the way. It's better. And before we put the screen back on here, again, we're only putting 2 on here because we have to take this off and repaste it. All right, let's deal with all of these cables and then we will worry about this because this now it's going to go on here one way, but it can still come out like this. Just have to make sure that the cable goes in the right place and doesn't end up squeezed against anything. which it looks like it might be. So this might not work. So yeah, this cable is going to be coming out this way apparently. So there we go. So now this cable is going to come out this side, and then we'll route it around here, up next to the memory, get everything plugged in, like back here. But first, we need to take care of that. It's fine, Emily. All I was doing is dropping off computers. All right, let's get this flipped over. We'll look at this. Here's that bouquet of cables we started working on pulling through. These are all Corsair cables. Grab some tweezers. Sure we're getting all of them through. No cable left behind. Alright, so like I said, that slides into place, and then we can put the retaining screw back into it. So now this front is practically ready to go. We're going to have to mess with the back a whole bunch, but the front, for this stuff, ready to go. Let's look at the top fans and then the rear fans. That's out of here. I mean, you can already see, like, you can't really see any cables at this point, which is a good thing. This is the cables coming off of this box over here, so not really anything we can do with that. While we're here, let's go ahead and let's repaste this. So that way we can put this on, we can put the screen on, we can run the cable for the screen. So we're looking here, you can see there's little clips right over here in the corner, and these cables need to be under these clips, otherwise you won't be able to put it on without issue. So we're going to make sure it's like that. This is in the bottom right. Line that up, and then it goes all the way down. Now we're going to rotate the whole case, try and get a little bit better angle of this, and then we'll get these cables run. Alright, so now let's put exactly what I was talking about. These fans. Can these fans go on the top? I don't think they can. These might be lower fans only, which reminds me, let's go ahead and slide these dust covers back in. Let's look at the top of this, figure out what the most efficient way to do this is going to be. That's the back. Yep, so we are going inside. Okay. Next. Well, there's only one thing that's next. Other than the power supply and video card, that leaves us cable management. Lastly, this thing is, it's just there. It's like, look at me. Look at the ugly thing you've created. Absolutely terrible. All right, last, but certainly not least, let's add the big one in. Keep in mind, this is not as big as these get. This is only a 3090 Ti. So, still more. So it can be bigger. This screen is 100% upside down. So hopefully that logo right there doesn't light up, because if it lights up, then we have a bigger problem that I have to figure out, which involves flipping this over. But oh well. Again, that being upside down is actually fine, because that can be flipped with software. All of our fans are now spinning. Let's see if we got video out. This thing is super duper quiet now. Let's see if we're getting video. So we have one fan that is not spinning. One of these Noctuas. Wonder if it's dead or if the port it's plugged into. So on the front, so there's separate LEDs on this thing. So that's fun. All right, we need to figure out a couple things very briefly. One, we got to figure out how hard it is to flip that software, that screen in software. And second, I accidentally unplugged it. That would be why. There we go. Other Noctua fan now plugged in. All right, we're all good now. Zotac GPU powering on. Everything's spinning quite nicely. We have video. So yeah, so these guys will move, like if he wants them to, these guys will move air. Like I know you can't really hear them, but they spin up. So LED. Oh, so that does actually change. That's nice. All right, so we're getting a CPU over temperature error. Why are we getting a CPU over temperature error? No keyboard detected. So we're still getting a CPU over temp error for some reason. So we need to investigate. I had forgotten about this. So when we look at this actually controls the pump, which is where this cable is going. Well, there's a SATA power on it that I completely forgot was there. So that, more than likely, is the problem. Because right now it has no electricity to drive that thing. Let's see if we have a little bit of a different story. Because that was actually not an exaggeration on that temperature that it was displaying. Now that's much better. So we're still going to, yeah. So we still need to figure out this to see if there's something that we can just do to rotate that. All right, temperature wise, in the 30s now. Let's see if this is something that I can control in the main in the BIOS, because it is plugged in with a USB. So we'll find out. I don't think this is something that I can. Okay, that's it. At this point, we pack everything up, put the back panel back on, put the top filter back on, and then get this thing out of here. Thanks for hanging out and watching this, guys. I know it actually took way longer than I expected it to. We're already at 2.5 hours working on this. All right, so shut it down, and we will get this packed up tomorrow when we get in. But that's it for me for tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll be streaming later. Got some video editing to do as per usual. Thank you all again. Have a good night. Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked that video, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And I stream daily on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpecVengeance. And yeah, if you want to learn more about my services, check out Bradenton PC Repair.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.